everybody, and welcome to the History and Chill channel, where we combine history and ASMR. And today I have planned another video about World War II. I have prepared 10 facts, 10 random facts about the war. And yeah, I think these facts are kind of interesting. And as always, if you like this kind of content, yeah, make sure to subscribe. That's always nice. Anyways, without further ado, let me just get right into it with fact number 1. Almost 130 million people, of which 4% were women, surprisingly, out of around 30 countries were mobilized during World War II. Keeping in mind that back then the world population was just 2 billion people, 70% were from the Allied side, the other 30% were from the Axis side. The USSR provided around 34 million men, which makes the largest provider of soldiers during the war. Next in line was the German army. They provided around 18 million soldiers. Germany was able to provide these numbers due to there being 9 million forced laborers in their country. 42% of their population was mobilized. The USSR provided 35% of their population. Moving on to fact number 2. Fact number 2. Operation Bodyguard was the name for the actions that were performed to mask where and when D-Day would take place. The Allies installed fake tent camps near Kent and Essex to make the Germans think they would attack in Calais, which was where the channel is the most narrow. They even made plastic dolls and inflatable tanks, and it paid off, because even after the D-Day landing, the Wehrmacht was still convinced. They still held 22 divisions of troops at Calais, because they still were convinced that the actual attack, the actual invasion, would still take place in Calais. This is also the work from a certain spy from the Allies. He was like used as a counter spy. He was a double spy, as they say, I think, because he was a spy of the German army, but actually he was a spy of the Allies, But he also informed the Wehrmacht that there were attacks being planned at Calais, and the Wehrmacht believed him because he provided earlier information about railroads, I think. But this information was just already given. It were just basically meaningless types of information, but they were accurate, so the Wehrmacht believed him. And also like the Allies, they also had fake radio signals being transmitted with messages of the training the troops in Calais for the invasion and stuff like that. So they actually performed a very convincing operation Bodyguard. But yeah. Fact number 3. Contrary to popular belief, kamikaze attacks were not random attacks. For those who do not know, kamikaze attacks are basically suicide attacks performed by the Japanese Air Force. Anyways, these attacks were well planned, and the pilots would know beforehand where they would hit the target for maximum impact. Luftwaffe pilots were eye catchers. The eagle was a symbol of the German army in World War II. He made sure that every Luftwaffe pilot was equipped with a flying eagle on their cap to stand out. On the shoulder of the pilots, the rank was shown with special insignias made with ivory and gold. Goering was known to live an extravagant lifestyle, and he wanted his Luftwaffe to be the eye-catcher of the German army. I saw a lot of documentaries on the political characters in World War II, and Goering is really fascinating in a way because he also has struggled with an opium addiction when he was out of favor with the Führer. And he was also a good pilot in World War One. I was looking for a word, but I lost it. I meant to say that he was given a lot of medals in World War One for his piloting services for the Air Force of Germany in World War One. As I already said, he had these special uniforms for the Luftwaffe made with a flying eagle rather than just an eagle that was being idle. And he had fancy insignias on his uniform and on the uniforms of the Luftwaffe pilots. They were made with ivory and gold, as I already said. Moving on to fact number 5. Pilot Wolfgang Speter was part of a team of engineers who were wondering if a soldier or pilot could parachute on heights more than 15 kilometers, so basically extreme heights. However, they did not want to test it due to worries it could be too much pressure for the pilots and that they would die. When he was having dinner with Adolf Hitler and Heinrich Himmler, Himmler told him that he wanted to test this with prisoners from the Dachau prison camp. Wolfgang, he had rooms pressurized and let the prisoners stay inside of these rooms. When Speter expressed his concerns for the prisoners, Himmler said, "Don't worry, the prisoners were given extra rations of coffee and cigarettes." He also said that the prisoners were looking messed up, but they survived. This caused for the crew of Speter being the first to parachute from such heights. So I thought it was an interesting one because it really showed the lack of empathy of Heinrich Himmler and the head of Heinrich Himmler being the head of the SS by just using prisoners as a testing as bunny rabbits to test if people can survive at extreme high pressure, in total disregard of the safety of the prisoners, obviously. But I guess this shows the evil nature of the Nazi head. Anyways, moving on to fact number 6, I believe. Yes, fact number 6. The fastest plane in World War II was the Messerschmitt 163B Comet. It had a rocket engine which would devour 2 tons of high explosive fuel out of 2 tanks right behind the pilot. The Messerschmitt 163B flew on a combination of 2 fuels, C fuel and D fuel. If these ever came in touch with each other, it would cause an explosive reaction, which made it really dangerous to refuel the plane. However, it could reach a whopping 960 kilometers an hour top speed, but it could only stay in air for about 8 minutes. Timing was then crucial for this plane to be effective. If enemy bombers reached a distance of 45 kilometers caused pilots to suddenly appear in enemy formation and then disappear again, causing vast damage. When returning to base after the attack, the pilots would run out of fuel and glide its way back down. It landed on skis. Only 20 Messerschmitt 163B's Comets would take off in World War II. The problem was that the Allies bombed the only factory that provided the fuel for the Comet, and that the Comet often missed the target. On paper, though, it was a war-winning plane. In reality, it was not, because it was really hard to fly these things, and one had to be very accurate. Also, I believe that the production was belated due to Hitler not really agreeing on the Messerschmitts to be used as a attack plane, so as a fighter. But yeah, something about that. You can look at it. You can look into it if you want to. Moving on to fact number 7. Alfred Liebals was a Jewish Catholic boy who lived in a German Nazi state. This was possible due to the Nuremberg racial laws. Which were formed in 1935. His father was non-Jewish. This made him come from a privileged intermarriage. This was between a Jewish man and a non-Jewish. This was between a Jewish woman and a non-Jewish man. There was also a non-privileged intermarriage. This was a marriage between a Jewish man and a non-Jewish woman. They were less fortunate, and they were sent to concentration camps. Alfred's life was anything but easy, though. They were marginalized in society, and at school they were bullied and they were not allowed to go into universities. They had to perform work with their hands. So basically, like Alfred, he lived during World War II as a Jew, but he was from a privileged marriage between a non-Jewish man and a Jewish woman. If it was the other way around, you would be sent to the camp. Yeah, I read this in a magazine and I thought it was interesting. It also was interesting because they were still allowed to perform manual labor, but not going to universities. And as it so happens, I was just the day before, I was following a philosophy class, online, and the teacher said that the dualism between body and mind is still a result from Plato's work, and in the Western world, there's still more value to be given towards the mind rather than the body. And this again proves that, proves what the teacher was saying, because obviously Hitler saw that the children of Jewish women and non-Jewish men could still perform manual labor, and he was like, that's less meaningful than university style labor, so working with the mind. Anyways, I'm rambling on. Moving on to fact number 8. In the spring of 1945, Germany was being invaded by the Soviets on one side and on the other side by the Allies. When the Soviets reached Berlin, Hitler decided to throw in its last reserves into battle. Boys of 16 and 17 years old were summoned to form 10 new divisions to counter the Soviets. In the end, this order was not executed, but thousands of existing regiments of units, and they were treated as grown soldiers. If a soldier was being a coward, he would be immediately shot. The exact number of how many boys the Nazis incorporated in their armies is unknown, but in the final months of the war, 60,000 boys from under 18 years old died in battle. 5,000 of them died in Berlin. The Russians feared these young soldiers because they were so fanatic, and they did not retreat because a younger brain often they didn't think of consequences, or they didn't have the doubt that retreating could be more meaningful than attacking. But yeah, so this is why the Russians really fear them, because the young minds is really action oriented, and they were really fanatic as well, being part of the Hitler Jugend. Anyways, on the 20th of April in 1945, Hitler's final birthday, by the way, Hitler distributed medals to some of these young boys, and this was his final public appearance, by the way. Now, in the movie Der Untergang, Hitler says to the boys that he gives medal to, he says, a quote, "I wish my generals were as courageous as you are." I'm not sure that it was an actual quote of Hitler, but I thought that was like a cool moment in the movie. But I'm not sure that he actually said that, but yeah, I guess I have to look it up. But yeah, moving on to fact number 9. Now, before I start this fact, I'm sure you all know that the war ended in Japan with Japan's capitulation, and it ended because the Americans dropped the atomic bombs. This fact is about the crew that dropped the bombs, the flying crew. So, moving on to fact number 9. The crew of the Enola Gay Flying Fortress, which was the plane who dropped the atomic bomb, did not doubt that throwing the atomic bomb could cost many lives, but they always said that it saved more lives than they took. Not one of them showed regret in interviews after the war. The bombing was the main cause of an invasion. The bombing was the main cause that an invasion of Japan was not necessary anymore. This invasion would have an estimate of around 500,000 casualties and more than 1 million injured. All the 12 crew members wanted to be remembered as people who made the world a safer place. Van Kirk, a crew member, quoted, "The war ended on August 14. Who knows how long it had lasted if we did not throw the bomb." Oh, I'm sorry. I bumped the book of my notes. Anyways, moving on to fact number 10, which is the final fact. Moments before the capitulation of Japan, there was a group of officers who wanted to prevent the capitulation and wanted to fight to the bitter end. This would have meant the total annihilation of Japan. The officers based their will on a 1,400-year-old code. This code of honor was made by the samurai in the 7th century. It was called Bushido. One of the lines was, "If you are a warrior, you must always reach for the sword and be willing to die. The biggest shame a man can have is to die without losing his life on the battlefield." Now this made me think about a Viking wanting to die on the battlefield for reaching Valhalla, because yesterday I was watching Vikings, the show on Netflix, with my girlfriend, and yeah, it reminded me of the same principle, like anyways, I hope you enjoyed these 10 facts about World War II. If you liked the video, please subscribe, and yeah, stay tuned for more, because more will be coming.